For anyone who's ever suffered from knee pain, has cartilage damage, really in any joint, I would say that the first thing is finding the pain-free ability, the actual motion you can do that is pain-free, with the intention and goal of increasing the range of motion, right? I actually believe that we can get you to at least 90% of your natural, original range of motion. Now, that might take time.
Hey guys, I'm Rich Wallace. I'm a physician, MD. Give you the long story. I went to undergrad at University of South Florida, went to med school at Meharry Medical College in Tennessee, came back to the Clearwater area to do my family medicine residency, and then I did a sports medicine fellowship in St. Pete. And at my sports medicine fellowship, I started doing urgent cares, and then ended up falling in love with that branch of medicine where it was a lot of variety, and just really enjoyed the game of medicine, helping people, do well, have their bodies do well. And so one of the things I learned was that a lot of misinformation is being put out into the world, and just medicine is super simple. And I just wanted to simplify it. And I figured what better way to do it than to have a podcast and just put some real, helpful, useful information out into the public so they can kind of get some stuff and help themselves. So what I want to do is bring in people such as my first official guest, Fernando Lopez. And why don't you tell everybody?
Yeah, hi, I'm Fernando Lopez. My social media profile is Natty Muscle Coach, which for those who don't know what Natty means, most do, but if you don't, it's natural, meaning no performance enhancing drugs. So I like what you said about simplifying, right? So my big thing is I also try to simplify high level performance training, or just to be able to tie your shoes better. Also supplementation, you don't need drugs, blah, blah, blah. So that's my whole brand also. And I work with lots of pro athletes. I've been training for 17 years. I myself pursued pro sports and currently also work with ATG, knees over toes guy. A lot of people will know that. Mm-hmm. And I actually started ATG with him originally, the gym, 10 years ago or so, 11 years ago. So we've been tight for a long time, and that's what I do.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. So just curious, as far as your past and the sports performance and sports career, what did you get into? What was your sport?
I played football, American football, and I grew up always wanting to be a football player, was always skilled, but the not athletic enough guy. Okay. 15, 16, 17 through high school, I was quarterback, then experienced some injuries and some complications around that, 18, 19, 20 area. Switched to receiver, went to community college, broke my ankle day one, or not day one, but game one. Right. And then again off, and then came back and switched to, at this time, I'm already training people, right? Right. And I started working with and training a pro corner at the time in the NFL, started ATG with Ben Patrick and switched to safety.
Okay.
Started to shout out to Charles Poliquin, who is my mentor, and he basically put me onto the path of how I train now.
Okay.
The technology, if you will, of training. Yeah. And that got me really close. I played in a minor league, if you will, for football, called the RPFL. Got paid a few $100 a week.
Nice.
Obviously not sustainable, but I played till I was 28, technically, and that was fun. And then I wrapped that up, and I've been just training clients and managing, running gyms ever since. And now, after COVID, I've started working with ATG again, and we're doing our thing online. And
it's interesting. Most people don't, for me, being a doc, most people think that we just, prescribe pills and just come in, get your medicine and walk out the door, and that's all you need to do. I'm the anti-medicine doc. I always feel like meds are basically like a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I feel like usually a person has a body issue, and then the medicine is basically just to kind of help handle the condition right then and there. But there's something underneath that needs to be handled.
Yeah. And
it all goes back to the basic premise of a body. Like some people don't realize that, we have this body just to be to be able to move, right? And then
Right.
just run, jump, do cartwheels, do whatever, right? So in fact, there's a bunch of studies out there that show that a person's health is directly proportional to how well they move their bodies.
Mm.
So, I mean, there's like legit, if a person can't move their body, their life expectancy gets lower and lower the less they can move their body.
Yeah, I know of several studies that also use strength.
Yeah.
Like grip strength, low back strength, all sorts of different strength measures, but essentially and also muscle mass.
Yeah.
Right? Less muscle mass, less strength, 100% means less life. So,
yeah, that's fully true. Fully true. There's definitely studies on that. Quad strength is another big one.
Yeah.
So there's a study that said that the longer a person can stand on one leg, tells you how long they're going to live, and it's true. Like these are in medical journals. It's not just like some gym journals. These are actual these are actual medical journals that they come out with, and they say that hey, if a person can stand on one leg for X amount of time, you can expect their life expectancy to be this amount of time. So
wow.
So it's actually pretty interesting, and it's true. Like you noticed the guys who are I have guys at the gym I work out at who are in their 70s and 80s that can do pull-ups,
right?
And they're just like super fit, super healthy, and they never have any. I never see them at the clinic because they're super fit, super healthy.
Right. They don't need the Band-Aids.
They don't need the Band-Aids.
They're handling the earlier. It's cool you say that because my dad's 73, 74 and is in better shape now than he was 5 years ago than he ever has been in his life, really.
Yeah.
And it's added decades, I believe, of life to him. Even if it's just in the quality of his life, it's added so much life to him. And I obviously, as an athlete, I started out with the interest of how do I get more athletic personally. And then it was, okay, how can I help other young and upcoming athletes not go through what I go through? And just as I continue to age, I'm like, okay, well, how do I now keep those athletes going?
Right.
And now I'm getting even older, and it's like, okay, how do I just get general people to not be so unhealthy? Because I start to look around and what's going on. We all know the statistics, crazy unhealthy population and right? Chronic diseases everywhere. And it's like, but you look and even when I was young, I used to go in the gym, I would just see movements that are not necessarily the healthiest. And so a big thing that we do at ATG, or even myself, I do believe that movement is like full range of motion. Basically, a lot of people will shortchange their motion, their movement, for that strength, but it's a false strength.
Right.
Moving, 6 inches or a foot, whatever, isn't really telling me you're strong.
Right.
Being able to stand on one foot and being able to touch the floor and maybe drop into a full squat or lunge. What if you fall and your body falls into these unnormal, these not natural or not stable positions?
Right.
Do you have the strength to withstand that and to get back out of those unstable positions? So I'm a big believer in full range of motion training, just to kind of like throw that in there where it's, to me, I believe it is strength. And then it's like the ability to move with strength.
Yeah.
Right. So
I used to have full range of motion of everything, but I had a injury to my knee in 2002. I tore my ACL playing soccer.
Okay.
And then had a repair in 2002, had another surgery in 2003, had another surgery in 2004, had another surgery in 2018, and then just had my 5th knee surgery a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And so I'm
gonna help you. No, I'm serious.
No, that's why I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because pre-injury, super, super fit. Like I tell people my stats, they don't believe me. We used to work out with 495 on squat. And I used to do, 405.
Okay.
Yeah, 405.
I mean, that's
I stopped
what
at 4 plates. So
that's what I use, and that's
I used to work out with 4 plates.
That's a lot
on squat, and then I used to military 185.
Nice.
We used to incline 225 for sets. I'm talking sets of like 8 to 10.
And what do you weigh?
About 160.
For those that know, I'm 210, and you're using the same numbers I am. So that's really
So I mean, I didn't realize that I had ludicrous strength and speed. I didn't know. I just had no idea. I just thought everyone was like this.
No.
And so that's what I used to do. And then actually when I ruptured my Achilles, I had a lot of injuries. Ruptured my Achilles in 93. and then rehab that, came back, could still touch a rim after that. And then when I did the ACL, huge drop in strength.
Yeah.
Like big drop in strength. And now I probably can squat 300 if I really tried, but honestly, with all the arthritis in the knee, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
Right.
And then I used to run track way back in the day. Had a lot of fun doing it.
Nice.
And I still train a little bit and try and run every once in a while. I didn't run at all in 2024, just because long story. Before I had this surgery, I popped my knee right before the turkey trot in 2023. And so I felt something pop. I was like, that's not good, you know, and doing a hurdle stretch, felt something, whatever, I'll run anyway. So I ran a turkey trot because I do this thing with my staff. We used to have like a 5K challenge where I like to beat young guys, you know? So, so all these guys are running. And then to me, like a 20-minute 5K is probably like a real, you know, it's decent effort, right?
That's pretty good.
And so knee was killing me. And I knew, it was turkey trot, so it's crowded, so I don't know where everybody is. I'm like, let me just haul ass and make sure I beat these guys. So I ran a 22 with a knee that was so sore. And
That's
so
really
that was the last time I ran. It hurt so much, I was like, okay, I'm done running. I'm not going to run. So I never ran since November 2023. And I love running. So then I switched to a stationary bike. So I just to keep the cardio going. You know, just because the surgery from 2018 was so bad, it was so painful, I couldn't confront doing another surgery. Because in my world, I knew I had torn some more cartilage, like off the bone. Like, you know, when you eat a chicken, how the chicken, you know, the shiny cartilage part. Yeah. My femur, my leg is really chewed up. Okay. So I have basically potholes on my cartilage, right? And so they do what's called microfracture surgery, where they drill holes in the bone, and the goal is to basically encourage growth of fibrous tissue. It's almost like resurface the bone, right?
Right.
It worked. So in 2018, that was the best my knee had felt in forever. And I was like, wow. I was like, the guy that did his name is Mitch Harriman. And I was like, dude, he fixed my knee. But it was such a painful surgery. And when I felt that pop, I was like, oh man, I got to do this one again. It's like, great. So then I didn't confront it for a year. So the whole year goes by, and one of my friends, Doug, was like, dude, what are you doing? Fix your knee already. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll fix it. So I finally did the MRI. And then the crazy part was the MRI said that my ACL was torn. And I was like, wow, no way. There's not a torn ACL in here. So so I ended up, I was freaked out because ACL tear is a whole other game, right?
Yeah.
You tore ACL?
No.
Okay, you don't want to?
No, don't want to.
Yeah, don't do that.
I've trained lots of guys that have torn ACLs.
Yeah,
lots of them.
It changes the mechanics of how your knee moves.
Yeah.
I have a theory as to why people, when they have a torn ACL, the cartilage gets chewed up more after they repair it. But that's another talk.
Okay.
Anyway, so my after I had the run and turkey trot, couldn't run again. Decided to not run, just ride the bike. I just was afraid of doing the surgery all over again. And finally got the MRI. MRI said that my ACL was torn. Didn't feel torn, because when you tear your ACL, the knee feels super unstable.
Yes. And
so I went to 3 different orthos. I went to the first guy. I was like, I'm not sure. I don't think it's torn, but let's just have you see the second guy. So I went to the second guy. Same thing. He's like, I'm not sure. You know, let me go ahead. And so I went to a third guy, and he asked me, he was like, what's the story with the knee? I'm like, how's it feel? I'm like, it feels pretty stable. When you tear your ACL, it feels very loosey-goosey.
Yeah, the bone
like the
doesn't.
Literally, it's like, and you can.
This bone goes forward and back.
Literally, everything is translating, rotating, and it feels just, if you can imagine how that feels, that's exactly how it feels. Yeah. And he was like, how does it feel? Does it feel like it's loosey-goosey? I'm like, nah, not at all. I totally feel stable. He goes, well, let's just scope it and see what we see. And I told him before the surgery, I was like, hey man, I said, in my world, my knowingness is that there's a piece of cartilage in there that's like getting pinched. And so I think a flake of that the fibrous tissue had popped off. And what's funny is when he went in there, he showed me the pictures. Sure enough, there's a big old chunk sitting in there. So every time I'd flex my knee, it would hit. It's like trying to put a pencil in a door jamb as you're closing the door. Wow. It was killing me. So I couldn't run, couldn't do anything. It would hurt when I walk sometimes. Wow. So got it fixed, got it repaired 2 weeks ago. You can fix me. Amazing. So amazing. I'll be coming by.
Well, good. Yeah. And for anyone who's ever suffered from knee pain, has cartilage damage, really in any joint, I would say that the first thing, and this is what we're going to start, is finding the pain-free ability, the actual motion you can do that is pain-free. with the intention and goal of increasing the range of motion, right? I actually believe that we can get you to at least 90% of your natural original range of motion. Now that might take time, but the first way to do that is we don't just go into full squats and stuff all of a sudden, right?
Right.
I want to talk about the sled, backwards walking. I got guys that come out of surgery 2 weeks later, they're in my gym and we got them doing backwards walking, no resistance. And then you add a little resistance with a sled. And the amount of blood flow, if you've never done a sled, the amount of blood flow you will get from with a light sled walking backwards, you will get so much blood, which we know blood has all the healing nutrients.
Right.
Cartilage gets less blood than muscles.
Right.
So it takes more time and intention on getting that blood in there.
Right. Okay.
It's something that's going to require, it's not like a muscle fiber where you train it hard to failure and it fails and then you need 2-3 days off. This is something you do probably every day, every other day, whatever. And you should keep putting blood. High reps, high repetition. Like if you have an elbow, it's the same thing. Band work, you're going to need to get lots of blood in there to start to repair that tendon. The number one thing that you don't want to do outside of the immediate injury is ice and not use it.
Right.
I'm sure we can.
It's funny. I had surgery on Thursday, and then Friday I was in the gym riding a stationary bike.
Good.
I was like, okay, I know the game. I was like, the longer you wait to start, the more painful and more frozen it gets, the harder it is to kind of get it rolling again. Because obviously this is surgery number 5. Yeah. I know the game. I was like, all right, I got to get started. You've gone through this. I was like, here we go.
Exactly. And this good segue, I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion on this rice versus meat? Have you heard of meat?
No, what's meat?
Motion, exercise, analgesic treatment.
I agree with the meat. Like I personally, the first day I heard something, I might ice it just because it's sore.
For sure.
So my knee's sore. I put some ice on it, then I'm good. And so I did.
It's like an acute Band-Aid.
I did ice on Thursday after surgery, right?
Makes sense.
And then Friday, I was on the stationary bike. Like I never heard about meat, but I knew.
You
I was
knew
like,
it.
all right, okay, I iced it yesterday. Let me just get on it. And I and I started
exercise.
It started cranking on it. And so
So analgesics would be, for if someone doesn't know what that is, it's like an
anti-inflammatory pain medicine.
Like kind of pain med. Like icy
cream,
hot, creams, things like that. And then treatment in my world is ART, active release technique, gua sha, tool. Like have you ever seen these different, even an old Chinese one with the needles. Like there's lots of different massage. There's lots of different treatments that you can do. Whatever, that's kind of you can pick. But the key there for me is that motion and exercise. And it's funny because the rice, it used to be rice, right? Rest.
Ice.
The total opposite. Rest, ice, which is no motion, withdraw.
Slow down blood flow.
Slow down. So you get less healing.
Right.
It's like, whoa. And by the way, all inflammation is not bad. There's a reason why your body's inflamed.
Right.
It's telling you something's wrong / it's trying to protect.
Right.
So maybe extreme situations, yes, you need that to come down. You can ice it, but a little bit of swelling is more like a signal. And actually another way to get rid of swelling instead of icing is actually to exercise it out, to put motion and blood flow, and it'll actually disperse it. I've sprained my ankles countless times when I was younger before I strengthened my body properly. And I started realizing, it would be swollen forever if I didn't exercise it. So
just thought of a question. Because we're both pretty motivated people, right?
Yeah.
So probably the hardest thing is getting people who are, not super into fitness and health to want to actually move the body. First, let me tell you one thing. Yeah. I'm a huge believer in bodies in motion is how you keep a body healthy, right?
Love it.
Yeah. So it's one of the things I like to do is to really try and get patients to understand that, hey, you got to move your body. You got to exercise, find a time when you're going to do stuff. I can give you so many examples where I have people who are, even if they're overweight, the right weight, if their BMI or body mass index is, their weight to height ratio. I don't know if you know what that is, but like normal BMI is about 25. I have people who have a BMI 25 and less who are having heart attacks.
Ooh.
And the only thing they have is they don't move their bodies.
Yep.
Like that's their only risk factor. They eat relatively clean. And, sometimes I'm just thinking about with one female patient I had who's in her 50s, BMI about 26, 27, and had a heart attack out of like nowhere, and she never exercises, like never
Yeah.
exercise. And I have guys, same thing, 50s, 60s, they
Yeah.
never move their bodies, never try and, move anything. And the excuses I get, is usually musculoskeletal. Oh, I have a sore back, a sore knee, a sore
Right.
whatever. And then
And that's
to kind of get that person to push through that initial, like, I don't know if you ever have clients like that are
Oh, yeah.
that are hard to kind of get through that.
Well,
Like, what do you do? How do you get them to like
so
start
obviously
moving?
I'm in a position, if someone's like following me, they're already to some degree motivated, right? So I will be honest and say that, but I have family and friends and I agree. The number one reason people stop moving is because of pain, joint pain, we'll call it.
Right.
Whether it's low back, knee, just to keep the two, those are number one. Per studies, number one is low back,
Mhm.
and number two is knee pain.
Right.
Like most injuries or whatever in joints. So that's where I feel like the right training comes into play. Kind of what I mentioned earlier. People will who don't know and they know they need to move their body. They just go on Instagram or on YouTube or talk to somebody or a doctor or a friend. They say, yeah, just go do squats. And it's like, whoa, like way skip gradient,
Mhm.
way later.
Right.
You have levels and levels to go, especially if you've not moved your body. Squats for you, you will get there. It's
Mhm.
not on my mind.
Right.
There are like 8 other exercises you're going to be doing before you ever do a squat.
Wow. Okay.
And you're going to get stronger.
I started squatting like 2 days ago.
Yeah. No. One leg. Which leg had a surgery? That one.
This one, yeah.
So why are we using both legs at the same time?
Good point.
Right. So same thing with the low back. Like if your low back hurts, don't put a ball on your back with weight and spinal load, whatever, which is itself is not bad. It's only bad if you have a weak low back. So how do you address low back? Okay. Is your core brutally weak that the low back is overtaking? Right. I could go on and on about why these joint pains get into problem or why these joints get into pain. Right. So the key would be to find the movement that doesn't hurt, that is okay, even if it's a quote unquote like cheesy or soft or weak movement, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So if somebody, so there's 2 parts to your question, 2 parts to the answers. Like number one, find movement that doesn't hurt.
Okay.
I always tell my clients and athletes, well, what cardio should I do? Should I go run? No, do the one you like best.
Mhm.
Why? Because they'll do it.
Right.
What's the best diet? The one that somebody sticks to.
Right.
No diet ever worked
Right.
by not sticking to it. One common denominator with every success story in any diet, I don't care, vegan, carnivore, blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
they stuck to it. And they cut out processed foods. That's
Right.
So that's a whole other conversation. But it's the same thing with cardio and with exercise. So for the heart attack specifically, we need that heart to be, it's a muscle.
Right.
People don't realize it's a muscle. You need to exercise it so that it continues to work. We all know that if you don't train your arms or your legs, you're not going to have a lot of muscle there.
Right.
You're not going to have big legs if you don't squat or whatever. And so same thing with the heart. If you don't use your heart, well, it's not going to work great.
Right. Right.
So find the motion that isn't so unbearable. I don't care if it's swimming, biking, sledding. If you haven't tried a sled, try it. It's pretty enjoyable and also requires less time to create an effect that would require a longer amount of time on a different tool, right? So you'll experience that. It's the amount of blood flow you get on a sled is like, and the heart rate and this and the lactic, the acid, that burn feeling.
Yeah.
All of that is like 3x'd in time on a sled, right? So, I recommend sled, but really anything you enjoy. If you have a pool or the beach, go, waddling through the beach, through the water. It doesn't matter. So now if you're not motivated, outside of that, like if you did find something that you liked, or if you have a joint pain, find the exercises, follow ATG, follow me. There are people out here that have figured it out. There is a way out of joint pain. There is, without surgery.
Right.
Now, of course, if a bone is broken, you need surgery.
Right,
like if the tendon is snapped, okay, you need to reconnect it. But after that, there is a gap between rehab, PT, and actual ability, physical ability. PT takes you to the point where you can move your joint.
Right.
And then there's this massive gap between that and actual functionality.
Right. That's where you guys...
And that's what I do, is take you from, okay, you can move your joint, usually not even that great, but I'll improve that too. And then get you to the point where you can really use that joint to its fullest extent. So,
question.
Yeah.
Did you is there any like formal training for this, or did you just learn as you like? How did you
I did
learn this stuff?
I've done a few of those things. I don't even.
Mhm.
I've never given it credit because I'm going to be honest. I don't almost use any of it. I use the basics of
Right.
obviously like biology and and like, you know, the I know the anatomy and different things. The NASM. I've done what's this other? I'm going blank. I actually just saw my cert the other day. I was moving.
So you did all the certs for the.
I've done different ones even,
Right.
but where I actually got it, there's two sources. Number one is Charles Poliquin.
Okay, who was that, Charles?
He's the greatest strength coach of all time, and that's not just a statement.
Yeah,
it's off of statistics. So he has the most gold medals of any Olympic trainer from the most different sports.
Nice.
So I think, don't quote me here, but I think it's like 24 different disciplines or 21. I mean, some absurd different sports. And then he's got upwards of around 100 gold medals or something like this. I mean, it's just like
That's
a whole
crazy.
nother level, right? And it was very funny because he was very hated or loved. You either hated him or you loved him, right? So kind of controversial dude, whatever. He's passed away. I was gone to countless of his seminars, and I used to have his, you know, be in personal conversation with him and my brother. He was going to train me and my brother for bobsled, blah, blah, blah. He, very cool dude. And I was at his last seminar before he passed away, actually. Wow. So
how old was he when he passed?
58 to 60. He had an electrical issue.
Okay.
Impulse with his heart, magnesium deficiency.
Okay.
But he told me about this. He basically had said, and I don't want to like put out any information, whatever. This is my own theory, whatever, in case somebody gets offended by this. But basically, from what I understand was that, and he had told me this, was that his genetics came from some Bavarian, you know, high mountain where the water was extremely high in magnesium. And this kind of all made sense to me. I was like, his whole life, he had heart attacks when he was young, really young. So he would take a lot of magnesium and it always handled the problem.
Interesting.
And he had seen some renowned doctor in some foreign country it's like a new theory that is coming out where a lot of heart attacks come from a lack of magnesium relative to their body, right?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So he had an international flight and then had like a last second emergency additional flight, which was not planned. Once he flew to America from Europe.
Right.
And he went to sleep and passed away. So my theory, it's never been, this is like completely my theory, is that he basically had a heart attack from a dehydration.
Possible.
Now, I also don't know if this guy was doing any cardio, you know?
Right, exactly.
He knew he should probably, but I don't know. So, but whatever. The point was that
he gave you the knowledge.
He was incredible. He opened my whole world to different types of training, things that were 40 years later after he discovered it, the science is backing it up. Right. So like, I use science, but I don't let it bottleneck me.
Right.
I don't let it throttle me. I don't let it throttle my thinking.
Yeah.
Science are great. They're a tool though. They are not necessarily the all out absolute truth. They are just a tool that you use to help guide yourself.
One thing you said that was interesting. You said, you mentioned anatomy. Yeah. And, when I went to med school, I actually got stronger and faster after I did gross anatomy.
Nice.
Because you would see for gross anatomy, you sit there and you basically dissect a human body, right?
Oh, you do it live.
So you actually have a human body and it's kind of funny, but everyone kind of names their body. My guy's name was Cornelius. So Cornelius, you know, got me to see how a human body works, and we would dissect different parts of the body and whatnot. And then once you would see the origination of where the motion where the muscle was, you know, attached, and then where it attached to the, you know, farther in the body, you could see the angles and how, if that muscle contracted, how it would make a bone move. And then like every single bone, every single muscle, every single joint, you just sit there and touch it, feel it, and look at it. And then I totally got faster and stronger after doing gross anatomy. It was insane.
You had more understanding.
Yeah, you had way more understanding. And it's funny too, because then I got to the viewpoint of I would also help train some guys run and stuff. And I tried to get them to learn anatomy. I was like, you need to learn anatomy. And like, why? I'm like, I just want to go run. No, you need to learn anatomy because it really does help. And I think that's true. Like if a person actually sat there and could confront a human body and like, okay, here's my quad muscle, and this is where it originates, this is where it attaches, and here's how the patella tendon goes down to the tibial tuberosity, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And they can see it. And you learn it and you completely understand, the mechanics of it. You can't help but be faster.
Yeah.
Or stronger, or whatever the case may be.
Or just, more functional, right? So it's funny that you said this thing about the tendon connecting to the tibia.
Right.
Well, one of Ben Patrick, my colleague here, the owner of ATG, like he kind of made popular tibialis raises, this exercise that strengthens this. And it has reported thousands of people have helped their knee pain.
Right.
And everyone's like, this is bullshit, blah, 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 blah. And he gets a lot of hate from it. He's like, I didn't say it was like some magic cure pill. It just seems to help.
Yeah.
That it does help knee pain because it helps bring blood flow to that tendon, which if that is what is hurting, simply bringing more blood can heal it. And to tie in also what you were saying about understanding the anatomy, that was the biggest thing I took from what you would say, like, traditional schooling, was understanding anatomy.
Right.
It is something that, like, I, as a trainer, when I'm looking at a client doing an exercise or a video coaching somebody, depending on the angles, what muscles are being targeted more because where that muscle is and how it moves, right? So muscles work one way. They contract and stretch.
Right.
Now, the combination of muscles creates movement patterns, right? Like that's using 2 to 9 muscle, whatever it may be. And that's more of a mental nervous system thing, right? Like how you move all these muscles in coordination. But the muscle itself just does one thing.
Right.
So I want to take that muscle, whichever one it is, and load it under stretch as much as it can pain-free through its entire range.
Right.
And then close it.
Makes sense.
And when people don't do that, when they go halfway, well, you're not training all the fibers, and you're not stressing the ligaments and tendons.
Yeah.
Right. There is a gradient to that, and you have to push that gradient and keep progressing. If you avoid using the full stretch, well, then guess what? Yeah, you're not going to be flexible, and you will start to lose range of motion until you become stiff. You might be really strong, but you're going to be really stiff. And in life, we're not always in this perfect controlled manner. We're going to miss a step, and now our knee goes way over our toe. Or our hips misalign. We don't have our backgrounds. You have to pick something up. You have to be strong in these positions.
Right.
So train full range of motion, understand your anatomy at the right gradient, and you can get I don't think anybody's ever tapped their true genetic potential.
I agree.
So there's like whatever level you're at, whether you're a pro athlete, Olympic athlete, or just a mom trying to get out of bed easier, you can make progress.
Yeah. Question. You said there's 2 things that you kind of give credit to get where you're at.
Oh yeah.
You said Charles was the first. What was the second?
Experience. Myself. But it's not myself. It's the experience with. I've trained over 1,000 people in person. So every time I've worked with somebody, I have learned something.
Right.
Because you can read a book, no matter how much you read that book, all the papers, all the studies, all the science, whatever, and you can train 10 people and it worked by the book. You will reach one day where where it does not work by the book.
Right.
Where somebody's body is a little different or something, and you have to. The biggest thing I pride myself on is my ability to adapt right there in the moment. Like, I'm going to say, we're going to do this exercise. But if you go, that hurts my knee, then it's boom, right on to the next. And I know exactly, change this form. Move your hip, move this. Let's train this, activate this hip muscle first, blah, 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 blah. All of that, you cannot learn from a book.
Right.
You only learn it from doing this, from practical application, right? So number 1 was Charles, by opening my mind and giving me the data, the technology, and then it's applying my experience.
And doing it.
Yeah, my experience itself is what has made me a good trainer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I dabbled in the training world when I was a kid in college world, and it was I enjoyed it. It was getting people to get results, but did not have the knowledge, didn't have that much experience. I was probably in early 20s. The only thing I had done was I had, learned a little bit of anatomy and also, ran track for college, and that was it. So it was fun.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned something that had just kind of triggered something for me. You said like early, like when people die early, it always kind of triggers for me PEDs, like performance enhancing drugs. That's the first thing I think of when I see guys dropping, like flies. And I always wonder, what's your viewpoint on stuff like that? Like a lot of people I know.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say a lot of people I know. A couple of my patients are on testosterone. That's like the new thing now.
Yeah.
There's so many
TRT.
In the medical world. There's a lot of push for guys to get on testosterone. Yeah. Like and they're super young. They're in their sometimes 20s, 30s,
That's
40s.
My problem.
And I can tell you, I've been doing medicine. I finished, got to med school in '96, graduated in 2000, and then really started practicing medicine on my own in 2000. I mean, as a resident.
Yeah.
And then when I finished in 2004, you're the one doing the whole thing, right? So for the past 21 years, I've been doing this game. I can count the number of people I put on testosterone on one hand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And from like, because they had an actual medical condition that needed testosterone, right?
Correct.
But I would say over the past, I don't know, decade, maybe 15 years or so, there's been a slow increase to where it's ridiculous. There's so many people who are on testosterone. Every day in my clinic, I shouldn't say every day, very often, I have people come into the space and they're on testosterone. And then when I ask them why they're on it,
ego?
I mean, I have my theories. This is a whole nother talk. It's a whole nother talk.
Yeah.
I could be blunt, but most of the reason is because, it's for some type of sexual enhancement. They want to
ego.
They want to look better. They want to look better. They want to perform better. And they think that the testosterone is what's going to do that for them, which to some degree, yes, it can make the body look healthier, but that's what I said. Look healthier doesn't necessarily mean that they are healthier. And so I see a couple of guys who are on testosterone, and the effects of it on the body are actually twofold. There can be benefit as far as muscle growth and things like that. But on the back end, there's a lot of damage that people don't realize is happening to the body as they're taking testosterone. So, and I see that all the time. Like I'll have patients. I have one guy, I can't name names, HIPAA violations. But anyway, I have a guy who was, I think he was in his 40s, 47. And I think he'd had like 3 strokes or 2. Ooh. Yeah, I think he had like his 3rd stroke or something. And the only risk factor was he was on testosterone.
Thickens the blood.
It thickens the blood, 100%. And then I had another guy, can't name names, who about 60 years old, recently had a heart attack. Recently had his first heart attack, ended up having, bypass surgery, blah, blah, blah. His only risk factor, he's on testosterone. And so I could do that. Like so many patients I see that come through that have, cardiovascular events when they're on testosterone. And so when they're in their, 30s, nothing's wrong, 20s, nothing's wrong. By the time they start hitting 40, 45, 50, that's when you start seeing these events.
Right.
And it's interesting because I don't think there's this misperception that, testosterone is good for a body. Yes and no. Everything has, there's pros and cons. Like a gun is good or bad. It depends. It totally depends on the situation.
Depends on how you use it.
Exactly. Depends on what's going on and whatever. But with testosterone, it's the same thing. It's like, I can see how some people want to use it. If you had a really bad injury, you want to cheat. I'm like, all right, man, I wouldn't do it. But, I can see how someone can justify it. But then the game becomes, as you do that, you're hurting something else. So it's like, what do you want to do? You're going to, go ahead. You tell me, what do you think?
No, I love it. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. And I have it. It's funny. I just talked about this before this interview. And there's only, for me, and my morals, my integrity, there's only 2 times where you should ever do it. One, which you mentioned, when you have an actual injury / genetic issue.
Right.
Fully tested, fully isolated by a trained doctor who knows hormone replacement therapy, etc. which in itself is like its own almost
Right. Like
subspecialization.
It's a medical thing. Like, guy has testicular cancer.
Right. Or he has like some signal issue. So a lot of military men from so much concussions can have a signal issue, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Right, right.
There are times where it is definitely because abnormally low testosterone due to a condition is very unhealthy. Right. Okay. And then they're on enough to be healthy. They're not abusing it to look good. Right. So people who do it for ego, people who do it for sexual enhancement, which is ego. First of all, there's other things you could probably take that are way less dangerous for that. Like it's like what it's just it's a wrong solution.
Well, I'll interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
To be honest, most of the guys that are on it, they there's usually an issue with their partner.
It's mental.
It's a mental thing.
Yeah.
It's usually mental. So I don't waste time. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, of course, right? So it's just not the right. It's the wrong target. It's the wrong solution. So, but look, I'm not going to tell a 25-year-old who has a family or a 30-year-old who now has a family or wants to save even if it's his parents, whether it's his kids or his parents or his whatever brothers, to take some performance engineering and start making 10, 20, 30 million dollars a year.
Right.
Yeah, you are paying for it. You may die 10, 20, 30, 40 years younger.
Absolutely.
But maybe that's worth it to you. And I know a lot of athletes that would say it is. And I'm not gonna argue with that. Like I wouldn't do it, or I haven't done it. I haven't needed to do it, thank God. But that's an interesting debate. I will leave that one open where like, look, if you're a pro athlete and it's part of the game, if you will, and it actually means you're going to be cut or make 20 million a year.
Right.
I understand. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Now, if you're Joe Blow and you want to look better and you're going to you think you're going to pull more girls, or let's not even go so extreme. It's just like, I want to eat pizza and drink a little more. And so I'm going to take this because it helps because it's a shortcut. People who do it for the shortcut. And I think 99% of the people who are doing it are doing it for the shortcut.
Right.
Because you are so far from genetically tapped. You don't sleep enough. You don't get enough sun. You don't eat enough protein. You eat too much processed food and sugar, and your stress management is terrible, et cetera. I could go on the things that you can get a lot better at that will raise your testosterone naturally before you do steroids. If you do all of that and you're honest with yourself and you actually are dialed in, and then you still have a condition or issue, see a doctor and then fine, get on a little bit of it to get you back to where you want. And so, yeah, number one would be the acceptable for me is like, okay, we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. Everyone kind of has their price to some degree on certain things. Fine. Number two, again, which ties into the health and connected, like my father's on it. I think it saved his life. He had, though, issues. He needed it. His hormones were obliterated. Why? Toxins, drugs in the 70s. Who knows why? Really, it was bad diet. He and here's to back that up is he got on TRT through a doctor. Everything's good. He got better. He had more quality of life. He was still a little overweight and still like not that healthy. He then fixed his diet, which, not to be controversial, he is a carnivore. I'm not a carnivore, but like he went full carnivore. He looks like me. And he has more life. I used to get emotional about this. He has more life now than he did 5 years ago.
Interesting.
I mean, the guy is alive. He just bought a new house. He's like moving to Colombia. I mean, he's like got his wife, my stepmom. He's completely full of life. He's 74 years old. He's in shape. He's healthy. Like he had a health issue prior, right? That was caused prior. And this is actually helping him. So of course he needs to be careful with the, again, he's not abusing it. This is just a guy who had issues that at 70 years old extended his quality of life. So I believe there is a place for it in extension of life, quality of life, maybe not even years, but at least the quality of life. There can be a place for it in longevity chapters.
Right.
And then you have the pro athlete, whatever. But again, if you're sub 65, sub 60, and you are not dialed, even the 70-year-old needs to dial in. Like it didn't even work for him until he got his diet right.
Right.
You see? So it's just a shortcut Band-Aid, and it really, I agree that it's just not worth the risk. Like it's
Right.
just not. We don't know exactly, or at least I don't. Maybe you do
Mhm.
more, but it thickens your blood.
Well, let me give you
Yeah.
the list. So
Yeah.
usually what happens when I see these guys, their blood is definitely going to be thicker. And there's a
Yeah.
couple ways the blood gets thicker. The first thing is their hemoglobin.
Yeah.
The molecule that carries oxygen. Their red cells start becoming more abundant.
Right.
So a normal hemoglobin is about 13, 14. Guys that are on testosterone, easily 18. Sometimes I've seen 20, which is
Wow, that's
ridiculously
like
high.
almost double. Yeah.
It's ridiculously high. And so the
yeah.
blood is super, super thick. And the guys
Mm.
who don't know that, a lot of guys who are on testosterone, they do therapeutic phlebotomy. Like they'll literally bleed themselves once every couple of
Right. I've
months.
heard of this. Like
They'll-
they'll donate blood
They'll
or whatever.
donate blood like every month or 2 or 3 because their blood is becoming too thick.
Mm.
Now, a simple, thought is if, that's the first thing. So the blood gets thicker because the red cells, you start having more red cells in the blood, right?
Yeah.
Also, it tends to raise their lipid panel, their lipid profile. So they
Yes.
get more cholesterol, more triglycerides. It can affect that as well, right?
Yeah.
So the blood becomes thicker.
And to tie that in, and if you're still not having a great diet,
Right.
now you're having sugar still with higher lipids, with thicker blood.
Right.
You're asking for a problem.
Yeah, I mean, the blood vessels, I call them the pipes. The pipes are
Yeah.
pretty simple, right? So if a pipe's only supposed to have a certain amount of pressure in there, otherwise you're going to start damaging the lining of the pipes, right?
Right.
And so these guys that are
The
on it,
endothelial.
yeah,
Right,
exactly, the inner lining of the blood vessels start to get damaged, and that's all it really is as the blood vessels get damaged, that's when you start getting plaques, and then you start having events, heart attacks, strokes, things like that, and it's just because the blood is too thick. It's literally, that's the only problem. The blood is too thick. And that's one of the big things I have with testosterone is that always thickens the blood. And I don't care how many times you go give blood, your blood is thick. You can't do it enough to where it maintains that natural balance where it's not damaging the pipes. It's kind of a risk that people take.
Yeah.
And like I said, that one guy that's on his 3rd stroke in his 40s, I'm like, bro, at some point, or the guy one of my patients who just had a heart attack a couple months ago. I'm like, was it worth it? I mean, so I'm sure from 55 to 60, he probably looked jacked and looked amazing, and it probably enhanced his quality of life. But now he's a cardiac patient,
right? And now he doesn't
have a quality of life anymore. So I'm just like, was it really worth it? The couple years of using testosterone to look good and feel good, and now his mortality is looking him in the face. It's like, all right, you're about to check out, my friend. So it's like, was it really worth it?
Yeah. I want to say to somebody my age, 35 or even under, right? It also stops your chances. It drastically reduces your ability to have kids.
Yep.
So just be careful. You don't know what you're doing when you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to be buff and get girl, whatever. Careful with what you decide, because it's not, you might say, I'll just get off of it.
Too late.
You ever try to get off that stuff?
Yeah.
I've heard some horror stories.
Yeah.
It is, you also once you do it, you have to do it for life, because your body will stop producing it, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about, I'm sure you know more about that. That's the biggest issue. That's my fear. I'm like, I wasn't going to do this for a couple years and then be ruined for the rest of my life, or I have to now be on this, but now I can't have kids. I mean, it's just like a spiral.
Right. It's a big game. Like this, I see patients every once in a while who've been on testosterone as a kid in their 20s, 30s, and then they want to have, they want to make babies, and all of a sudden they don't have sperm.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out what happened. And so most of the time it's because they're on testosterone.
Yeah.
And so when I see these young guys get on it, I mean, it's great. It's kind of like it's an interesting, catch-22. They get on the T so they can get a girl. And then now that they have the woman and the wife, they can't have a baby. And I'm just like, was it worth it? It's this weird dynamic that people don't think the whole thing through. So I'm not a huge fan of vitamin T, as I call it.
Vitamin T, that's good.
And it's funny too, because you can kind of see the guys who are on it. They always have, they're really strong for their age. They're like, in their 50s, 60s. You're like, wow, this guy's pretty strong. But then they all have that red, ruddy complexion. Like they always have really.
Their veins are also big.
Yeah, because of all the pressure in there.
Because of the pressure, because of the thickness of the blood. That's what I noticed. I'm like, if he's got big old veins that look like I'm about to explode, he's probably on something.
Yeah.
Also, again, with getting off of T, like if you did, I'll do it and get off of it. I know a lot of people have fallen into depression because you will never be able to have those. You're supernatural, so you're not going to be able.
Let me give you real talk.
Yeah.
I've had patients who are straight up suicidal.
Yes.
When they try and come off testosterone.
I've had clients this way.
Yeah. So they get on it, and no one talks about this stuff. Because I've seen medical journals and medical podcasts, like obviously they have these hormone replacement clinics that tout, oh, testosterone is wonderful, it's good stuff for you.
Yeah, they're selling.
Because they make money off it, right?
Yeah.
But then I see the guys who literally come to me saying they want to kill themselves. And I'm just like, wow, okay. And then when you do they're on T, they can't get off. And when they try and get off, they want to kill themselves.
Right.
And it's like this terrible situation that they're involved in. Not ideal, definitely not something I prescribe to anyone.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think I've had maybe 4 patients in the 20 years I've been practicing medicine that I put on testosterone because of not because they had low T. Right. Because they actually had a condition that required. Exactly. And then another random thought, you said sleep and diet.
Big time.
Huge. I had, when we first, I don't want to put people on the bus, but when we first started the clinic, I would hire firefighters as my medical assistants, great guys, really good guys. And I'd hire them as MAs because they're super professional and, they're good looking dudes. And also they act as security because they're all like 6 foot, swole, And a lot of them had low T. They had, some of them, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them had low testosterone. And then also some of them had had thyroid issues as well.
Yep.
Just because sleep deprivation definitely messes the body's hormone production up.
Big time.
So when a person is not sleeping properly, that's probably the first thing I tell them when they have, hey, I have low T, get more sleep.
Yes, sir.
It's like, start going to bed, put the phone down.
Yep.
Just put it away from you. That's my trick. I charge it somewhere where I can't reach it, can't see it, put on sleep mode. 9:30, phones down on the floor where I can't reach it, and then you just continue the rest of your night.
Do the same thing.
And then you can actually get some sleep. Most of the time, it's just a sleep deprivation issue. Like 9 times out of 10, that's why they have low T.
Yep.
And when they, if that's in, and then the next thing obviously is eating correctly and then exercising. And
Yes.
if those things aren't in, then it's like, well, let's handle these things first.
And sun.
Yes, sun. Yeah, vitamin D. Vitamin D is huge. Vitamin D is huge.
Pro hormone.
And we live in Florida, so everyone should get some vitamin D.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For those that are on TRT that maybe are watching.
Yeah.
Is there a solution? Like, again, not great because you're already on it. Let's say whatever, or maybe a kid's watching this like, dang. Like, okay, like what would be a sort of counter drug or solution to counteract that thick blood? Because my dad, for instance, takes half a baby aspirin.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever done this or heard of this, but I don't know if you have something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they have to really be on top of it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like once you start taking testosterone, I mean, I'm not a hormone replacement doc by any means. I'm just thinking, what would I do if I had a patient that really wanted help, but they don't want to get off of it?
Right.
You'd have to really monitor your blood, and probably more frequently than you want to. You'd probably have to check your levels pretty frequently. Probably
like 6 weeks?
I would say I'd say like every 2 to 3 months, you probably should check and just keep an eye on things.
Yeah.
And then after you get a certain threshold, you probably should do some therapeutic phlebotomy. Most guys, once they start seeing these hormone replacement docs, they only get checked once a year. So, once every year they're checking, oh, you're high, you should probably go get some phlebotomy.
Yeah, it's like, well, what damage did I do that 9 months?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. And it's like, so these guys are on, and girls too. There's a lot of women who are on testosterone, which is an interesting game. And so they're still damaging their pipes. Yeah. And then, so what would I think makes sense? Ideally would be to kind of taper off of it and then put in the natural, what I call body rudiments that would have your testosterone levels be normal. So you'd probably if you could taper down to if not nothing, the lowest possible dose you would take. And then I would just basically, serial, blood checks. And then as far as another drug to kind of counteract the effects of testosterone, there's more. There's actually another thing that I think is interesting I didn't mention. So that's what I would do to handle that part of it. Another thing that I see with testosterone use is guys will have prostate hypertrophy. The prostate gets bigger.
Oh yeah, this is like you have to check your PSA or whatever.
PSA, yeah. So very common for a guy when they're on testosterone to have prostatic hypertrophy where the prostate gets larger.
Because everything kind of gets larger, right?
Yes, everything gets larger. So does a prostate. And so if people don't understand how the prostate works, the prostate's a small, walnut-sized gland that's right on the bottom of your bladder, right?
Okay.
So your kidneys are up here, right? And then you have your tubes, your ureters that go down to your bladder. And then underneath your bladder, you have your prostate.
Okay.
And so the prostate, through the middle of the prostate is where your urethra starts, and it goes out through your penis so you can pee, right? So as the prostate gets bigger, it starts to squeeze and it pinches off the urine outflow. So they start to have a lot of issues with kidney issues. So you see, a lot of times I'll see guys who are, they come in and they're having like renal issues, and really the kidney issue is because there's an outflow obstruction. So the pressure backs up into the kidneys and it damages the kidneys.
This is like this is that old tale where it's like, oh, it's bad to hold your pee because it can backflow.
Okay. No, it can. So these guys have, restricted urine outflow. Okay. Then the kidneys get swollen, and the kidneys eventually stop working if they don't ever fix the prostate.
Right.
And then
now I gotta pee.
And then they they end up on dialysis and all kinds of issues and stuff. And it's like, was it worth it? It's like, you're doing T, you look good, everything's wonderful, but now you have to be on dialysis. It's like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
But and then another thing too is as the prostate enlarges, sometimes it can affect erections, which is funny because that's why you take it in the first place.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. So they end up having an issue where they can't perform anyway. So it's like they don't tell you this, and the guys who are on it for a long time won't tell you this, but they get to the point where sometimes they can't even have an erection anymore.
Whoa.
So they get to the point where they're on it, they look good, 50s, 60s. Now all of a sudden they can't perform.
Oh wow!
And it's permanent. Like once you damage nerves,
the
nerve's not coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And that brought up another thing about this. The body has this counter effect, right? That can almost be, or the body will react in a way that counters the exact reason of why you did it, right? So this is something I know from my own studies is increasing your testosterone. The body will always want balance,
right?
So it'll, just to keep it simple, along with a lot of other things, will raise your estrogen.
Right. 100%.
And now you have this whole other problem, risk. I'm pretty sure your cancer risk increases when you have high estrogen. You have all these other issues. And now you have to take another drug to lower your estrogen, which I know a lot of these guys do. Yeah. And now it's just this cascade of problems all the way down the line.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the anti-estrogen, now you still can't get an erection because you have too much high estrogen. I mean, it's just like you get the classic
gynecomastia. You can call it what you call it. They call them bitch tits.
There we go. I didn't know if we could say it, but I was going to say the bitch tits.
I mean, a bitch is a female dog, so they call them bitch tits.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it causes all sorts of issues.
You can always tell the guys around it. When I ran track at USF, I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
I won't do it. Anyway, we had a guy who ran track with us, had a bitch tit. I was like, oh, look at him. He does.
It's the best indicator. You're like,
the guy's all ripped, but then he has a little bitch tit. It's
exactly.
Okay, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So but I get it. People do it because they want to perform, but it's just, to me, it's just not worth the risk.
Yeah. Look, you better be getting paid a lot of money. Because you're literally giving away your life.
Yeah.
And maybe at some point, maybe you say, oh, here's $1 billion. Okay, maybe I would do it too. But anyways, that's a whole other debate. But I agree. Just stay away from it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So since testosterone we're talking about, do you know of any, like, what are some of your cheat codes, I would say, to help people get super fit, and like the top 5 things you could tell someone, hey, if you want to really start getting better and better able to move the body, what would you tell them to do?
Good. I'm going to leave out exercise and clean eating. Clean eating meaning processed food. Everybody kind of knows. Don't eat the bag of chips. Don't eat the candy, the donut, the cake. Okay, we all know that. So I'm going to leave those 2 out. And if you didn't know, now you know. Those are 0A, 0B. All right. Number 1, get out in the sun. You have to get in the sun. Don't wear sunglasses when you're in the sun. Do at least 15 minutes when you wake up. Just wake up before coffee, everything. Just go stand outside. Figure it out. Do something. So you need more sunlight. Everybody, I haven't met a single person yet that actually gets enough or too much sunlight. All right. On a consistent basis. Number 2, eat more protein. I don't care what protein source. We won't even get into that today.
Mm-hmm.
Eat more protein. Okay. Very hard to overdo it on protein because you'll just get too full. Like I've never heard of someone be like, oh, I had 4 pounds of steak, because you
Right.
can't.
Right. All right.
So, and a good study just came out recently that 100 grams in one sitting, in case you're worried, oh, well, I have to do 30. Bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
They did a study where they're comparing 30-gram protein meals compared to the 100-gram. And the 100-gram, not only did it get utilized as well, it actually was a 2 or 3 times more anabolic response. Like it actually was better for muscle growth and better utilization and stuff like that. Just think of it as a caveman. We didn't
Right.
ration that much. We would eat a giant meal and then maybe save a little for later. Okay.
Right.
So more sun, more protein, more sleep.
Yeah.
That could, I mean, these are not in a particular order.
Right.
That's the 3 main ones.
Yeah. Let me jump on the sleep part. It's funny in school, med school is the first time this happened to me. I was about 150, pretty strong, pretty fast, whatever. We started doing call where you don't get sleep that night, right?
Ooh.
So once every 3 nights you get no sleep. For me, body would crave carbs.
Yes.
Like you'd not believe. I mean, I would just super tired, would always, like protein, I didn't care about protein. I just wanted carbs.
Yes.
And then the sleep deprivation made me eat like crap.
So,
and so
go
definitely,
ahead.
yeah. So sleep deprivation, if I'm getting good sleep, I don't crave crap. If I'm sleeping 3-4 hours, interrupted sleep, all I want is donuts and pizza, man. That's
perfect segue to my next one too. And this falls into like my thing of the nutrition. We know that low sleep raises your stress, which is cortisol, right? Which is a hormone. It's the stress hormone. The higher the stress hormone, how do you lower cortisol in the blood? Sugar. So the body craving sugar, it's actually smart. It's saying, I'm too stressed. Give me sugar. It'll lower my stress.
Right.
So it's like, you're not messed up for craving sugar. No, it's an underlying factor. You're too stressed out. Why? Lack of sleep. So yes, sleeping better will literally cut cravings. But my next one is dehydration. Right?
Yeah.
You need to hydrate because dehydration instantly skyrockets what? Cortisol.
Right.
Stress, which then leads to sugar cravings. Most sugar cravings, I've done this with clients. They're like, because I have like some high paying clients that will like, they're allowed to call me anytime. Right. So they'll call me, I'm having a sugar craving. I'm like,
drink some water.
No, take a salt water shot.
Nice.
1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon with a little lemon. Boom. Gone. They're like, they freak out, right? There's even more. There's like one other solution I use for sugar cravings, but that's whatever. We'll get into more details another time. But it's usually just like, I would say 80-85% of the time, it's just lack of sodium, lack of salt and water. Yeah. So it's salt, potassium, all of them, magnesium, they all work together. You need all of them. Take an electrolyte, drink more water. Okay. Right. But just empty water, which I'm sure you know, like can also dehydrate you if you're not taking any electrolyte. Don't be afraid of salt. So in my number 4 point would be like, have enough sodium, have enough electrolytes with enough water, right? So hydrate properly.
Okay.
And then number 5 is kind of, to go now more into the actual, because you said about being like strong and health and fit, like, so these all kind of would help your energy and your fat loss. And now I'm going to change the gear there and say that 5th one is don't be afraid to train hard. Like that doesn't mean breaking or injuring yourself. It just means train to failure. Even if it's a lightweight, like train to the point where it's truly difficult. Don't begin to feel a little bit of pain or stress and then back off. Like learn to sort of enjoy the uncomfortable. The phrase is like, be comfortable in the uncomfortable. So if you really start to train on a ramp, on a gradient, just make it a little harder each time. Okay. And if you're doing the 4 previous points and you start to train, with some intensity, I don't care if it's twice a week, but make them hard. Okay. If you train to failure or whatever, you're going to grow muscle as long as you're doing the other 4.
Right.
So those would be my 5 points.
All right, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming and hanging out on my first official guest.
Thank you for having me.
Right.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Cool, man. Thanks. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit a like, and then also you can subscribe. The plan is to give you guys some more of these type of podcasts where we kind of go over some simple stuff about bodies and how we can make them better, have guests on like Fernando as well. So also don't forget to hit your notifications so you can get notified when we put up some more podcasts.